In 2015, the University of Michigan coined the term Egyptomania to refer to the obsession many people have with ancient Egypt. Such an obsession is quite understandable, as this was a unique civilization that managed to survive for over 3,000 years, making it one of the longest-lasting civilizations of all time. The ancient Egyptians were able to witness impressive animals that are now extinct. That's why today we're gonna tell you about these impressive animals that lived near this ancient empire. But before we start, I want to invite you to stay until the end because you'll be surprised. And if you want me to greet you in the next video, stay until the end to unlock the keyword to put in the comments. We begin by stating that ancient Egypt emerged with the death of Cleopatra along with the establishment of Roman Egypt. During its impressive existence, Egypt saw the creation of many inventions and innovations in almost all fields, but they were not only witnesses to these advances made by man. Also, natural wonders occurred that allow us today to know more about our planet. Back then, nature was more pristine and wild than it is today. In fact, while the Great Pyramids of Egypt were under construction, mammoths still roamed the earth, or at least in a small part of it. Also, almost all countries were different from what they are today, with Egypt in particular being quite unrecognizable. In ancient times, this empire was characterized by being colder and wetter, especially during the early days of the year. In addition to this, the Egyptians built most of their civilization along the Nile River, which at that time was more lush and wide in the territory it covered, partially attributable to the lack of human interference. As a result of their advances, the ancient Egyptians enjoyed a wide range of nature that is no longer seen in those lands. This includes animals that are no longer present in Egypt, but there are still some that exist in other areas of the world, and others that have completely gone extinct. Unfortunately, one of those animals is the Barbary lion, which no longer exists, at least in the wild. The Barber lion, which you may have heard of, was a powerful feline. It lived in much of the Egyptian territory, inhabiting a good part of the extensions of the empire and its surroundings. It also lived in deserts, mountainous areas. The lions were giants. They could measure more than 8 feet or 2.4 meters from head to tail. Hunters of that time describe it as the largest type of lion that exists, often weighing 660 pounds, or the equivalent of 200 kilos, which is approximately 15% heavier than current lions. Despite its enormous size, this lion was not technically a distinct character from the average feline species, not even a subspecies. Rather, populations of specimens with certain variations were found, also known as the northern lion, having a quite complex and peculiar relationship with the ancient Egyptians, as it did not live directly near the settlements of the plebeians, so this lion was rarely found near humans. However, encounters still occurred from time to time, and on certain occasions there were attacks on farmers or livestock, although such cases did not occur frequently enough to be considered a significant threat to the Egyptians of that time. Ultimately, most people never saw these lions, but they understood that they were the fiercest predators on Earth, capable of taking down prey much larger than humans, such as wild boars, buffalo, and occasionally even elephants. Likewise, the citizens of high society had a much closer relationship with the Barber lion, incorporating it into religious art and writings that were later found by anthropologists. They often tried to emulate its power and skill in their own art of ruling ancient Egypt. During their coexistence, it was not uncommon for a pharaoh to have Barber lions as pets, or even to train them to protect their thrones. Not satisfied with this, they were sometimes also buried alongside these great lions, as evidenced by the remains found of an adult male in the tomb of Tutankhamun's wet nurse. Another case involved 5 lion skulls that were part of a mummification ritual, demonstrating that sometimes it may not be the best to be venerated. This is seen even more in the hunting of adult Barber lions, and how several pharaohs hunted them to demonstrate their own bravery. An example of this is Pharaoh Amenhotep III, who killed 102 lions in just 10 years. The Berber lion, or the Egyptian lion, ended up disappearing from the Egyptian lands, putting an end to this majestic feline that lived in ancient Egypt. Another extinct animal that called these lands home and had a much closer relationship with the plebeians was the aurochs, scientifically known as primigenius, which was a species of cattle that is often considered wild, being one of the ancestors of the cow. However, unlike their domesticated brothers, the aurochs were different in that they were giants, weighing up to 3 or 4 tons. However, they mostly weighed 2 tons on average. This specimen was more comparable to bison than to cows, and they were not simply larger, as they also had different proportions with long long legs and slender bodies. While their necks and torsos were more robust and muscular, the horns were also improved versions of those observed in domesticated cattle, boasting larger-sized horns. All this paints a picture of a bad cow. In fact, it was thanks to a personality that matched its threatening appearance that the aurochs were well known for being less docile than current cows. And even, they regularly killed each other. During mating seasons, they became quite violent and dangerous. This may be the reason why they were less sociable than other bovids. If you are enjoying the video, support us with your like. This helps us bring more prehistoric content. Subscribe to our channel and activate the bell. On the other hand, herds used to be small and seasonal, but the ancient Egyptians did not necessarily fear the aurochs. In fact, this specimen played an integral role in Egyptian society, generally through the meat they provided. Through their hunting and consumption, they also helped the economy of the Egyptian empire, providing meat and bones that easily sold in the markets. Moreover, there is evidence to suggest that the aurochs were kept in small groups that could be trusted for resources. Although people were still aware of their use, their tempered personality reflected why the aurochs remained a symbol of power and prowess within ancient Egypt. Unfortunately, their power and fierce temperament did not save them in the long run from extinction. The aurochs managed to outlive their ancient Egyptian acquaintances, and some even claim that they may have existed in the territory of the ancient Roman Empire. This hypothesis is raised thanks to the main belief of habitat loss, which along with human hunting would eventually lead to their extinction. This marked the end for the native aurochs of Egypt. It is important to mention that each extinct animal was admired to infinity. Now then, to what extent did the ancient Egyptians respect this imposing animal? This specimen, the trunk mammal, was a subspecies of the African savanna elephant, much smaller than the subspecies and elephants of today. Mature adults are more comparable to Asian elephants than African ones, although they tend to be similar to their relatives. These made a proportionally large effort, having concave ears and backs that gave a distinct air to this species. In the early days of ancient Egypt, they could be found throughout the kingdom within the sheets of grasslands, forests, deserts, swamps, and highlands. Such a diverse list of habitats left the North African elephant with the possibility of reproducing and expanding over a wide terrain. Elephants were never particularly common in ancient Egypt, where years of population loss had been experienced. In advance, what ultimately led to them not lasting long is that they had completely disappeared their delimited habitat in ancient Egypt. Their extinction could have been exacerbated by people who, while living alongside them, despised these elephants as they regularly consumed their crops. The African elephant was used for war. The pharaohs used them extensively for battle. However, they persisted until the 4th century AD, when the Romans imposed themselves and conquered them. The imports of these elephants for use in games and the circus also took their toll, thus leading them to their imminent disappearance. On the other hand, the hippos that inhabited ancient Egypt would also receive rough treatment from their human counterparts. Fortunately for them, the population that inhabited the region of Egypt was made up of the same subspecies that is still seen today throughout Africa, which means that they have only become extinct locally in Egypt, as is the case with the North African elephant. These giants and sometimes chaotic creatures enjoyed damaging crops and thus angering humans, but they also took some steps, attacking boats, lashing out at people, killing livestock, and generally wreaking havoc. They apparently represented such a problem that even the pharaohs had to intervene to solve the problems caused by these beasts. The first pharaoh of Egypt, who was present in his 62nd year of rule, was taken and subsequently killed by a male hippopotamus. Evidently, both hippos and humans did not get along well. In ancient times, Egypt led to selective attacks against hippos. The devastation of crops by hippos was so bad that the early pharaohs would end up spending many resources on the extermination of hippos. They would then focus on expelling them from the marshes, and boy did they do it. The survivors of the attack took refuge from civilization in Upper Egypt, but they were still the target. The pharaoh regularly hunted hippos in rituals and ceremonies, although despite this, the ancient Egyptians recognized the best efforts of the hippos to survive along with all the other animals we brought you today. If you like this video, support us with your wonderful like and subscribe to our channel for more prehistoric world videos.